Hello and welcome to another Mobalytics video. I'm your host Virkayu and welcome back to another jungle video where I will be talking about the most difficult junglers for you to master. And why would people want a video like this? Well, if you are a particular someone who likes a challenge, who wants to constantly feel like they're learning something new, maybe you always want to push the limits of a champion's potential because you're never quite reaching it, that there's always something that you could improve upon at the end of a game even if you played very well, then these champions are for you. And on the note of getting better and improving, what better way to do that than using Mobalytics or the live companion app to track your progress as a player, keep an eye on the most crucial aspects of your game that you need to improve on, and combined with spamming games from the champions in this video, you will definitely see some long-term progress. Right, now I do release a specific tier list for only junglers, the best junglers on my personal channel, which will be linked below. And in that, we talk about what are best overall, what champions perform best in solo queue, for high elo, low elo, overall. And very often I talk about champions in the high elo aspect or champions that are difficult to use. And so this video is really here to highlight some of those champions and give you a breakdown of what you need to do in order to actually succeed. And obviously we have to begin with the one and only Lee Sin. We all remember Tian from Worlds last year, we remember the Broxah plays from the year before, you watch Jankos play in solo queue. Anyone who can pilot this champion with extreme ability is always very pleasing to watch, and that's because he's one of the most mechanical champions in the game in terms of what you can do with him. Yes, the in-sack has kind of been normalized, and that's because the player base's skill on average has really increased over the past couple of years. Yeah, save your memes, it's true, everyone is better overall, much more so than they were in Season 3. But ultimately, he's just very difficult to use, and that's because as of level 3, you have 6 abilities. Your ultimate just adds in another dynamic as a 7th. So much can easily go wrong when you start to combine ward hops, Qs, kicks, using these abilities not only aggressively but also defensively to dodge other abilities, avoid skill shots, move around team fights, when exactly should use the second part of your Q for that bonus damage. More so than just knowing what to do is when to do it. You have so many options in every situation and a lot of them can be wrong and all of them can be right. When you have so many choices, you have to be able to decide in the moment, should I choose option 1, 2, or 3? And then you also of course have to do it. And because of his kit and the fluid nature of it, that decision-making process needs to happen very quickly. And all of this comes from muscle memory, experience, game time, and obviously knowing all the combos and how to use the skills in the most optimum way. And that's only in a PvP sense, fights, skirmishing, ganking. What about the rest of his game plan? He is very punishing if you don't optimize your experience, maximize your level 6 spike, and use pre-6 ganks and invades to exert pressure on the map. He is very difficult to close game out with because he is not a late game jungler, which means not only do you have to know and be fluid at all his mechanics, you also have to have good game sense, macro knowledge, and win condition understanding in order to maximize his particular skill set. Now, Lee Sin is not very rivaled when it comes to mechanics and win condition knowledge in terms of executing a jungle game plan, but Nidale is very close. And honestly, in fact, she might even be more difficult in some cases. Where Lee Sin's kit can feel intuitive and smooth and make you feel part of the matrix, none of Nidale's kit is really that intuitive to play apart from, lobbing spears. And of course, Q is not her auto attack, and this is the biggest thing about her. Yeah, she has 6 abilities. Yes, you can swap forms, you have an execute, you can have a long range jump if you hit said spear, or of course a trap. So many players do not maximize the one thing she has that really sets her apart in this list. She is ranged when in human form. Auto attack people down, use a rep buff, heal yourself, get some attack speed, lob your Qs in between. These micro mechanical differences make a big difference between whether you are a tiger or a house cat. Also, by the way, while she has full clear potential, 4 camp potential, invade potential. Yeah, I did a jungle route video the other day and honestly I was basically thinking, well, Nidale can do all of this. However, you have to optimize it, do it well, understand how to kite, how to heal, and exactly know what your game plan is versus the enemy jungler. Use the mark system, use your traps, use your resets. All of this adds so much DPS, not just burst damage, but DPS, and people don't realize that. You actually have to master how to close games much like Lee Sin. If you are not proactive, if you are not really taking the game by the horns, or I guess the fangs, then you're also not going to have a good time much like Lee Sin. Amazing at her full potential, terrible when played, well, less than her full potential. Just make sure as Nidale, you are not so much concerned with lane impact. Yeah, I mean you are, but your real strength lies in invading the enemy jungler and removing them from the game. Tower dives and objective focus, as well as supporting those lanes and getting those towers down very quickly. Her map mobility is absolutely disgusting. Counter jungling in invading really is quintessential to her existence, and when you combine that with good ganks and smooth first clears, you are looking at absolute feline domination. But then again, remember her best win rate is still in Korea, Master Tier Plus, for a reason. Now let's lower the mechanical threshold and go to Khazix. You're thinking, what, Khazix? He's pretty straightforward. You run at people, I use my W, my Q, and off we go. I don't even need to use my E anymore. Well, let me stop you right there. The people who say that, they are bad Khazixes. First off, he just got buffed, so he's sitting pretty high in the win rate chart, which means now's the time to actually use this guy to go get some wins. The other thing is we did on Mobalytics a 5 tips and tricks to master Khazix, and we also did a video on Ogurin using Khazix to get rank 1. We talked about the builds, the atomization, the mechanics, none of which is quote-unquote difficult, but ducking around with stealth, using your jump resets if you evolve E, you shouldn't always do that blindly, using the slows, and of course, as we said, the build can give you a lot of decisions to make within the game. Oftentimes, you need to think about your rune set and your evolve path before you get into the game, just matching on team comps from champ select. His auto attack when the unseen threat passive is reset gives you a slow. His W gives you a 90% slow when evolved. You also need to understand the animation cancelling with an auto attack W and Q. Khazix also relies very heavily on position on the map and knowing how to set traps as an assassin to use that isolation damage, which was just buffed by a nice amount of 20%. Yeah, that means he's not just a flying grasshopper now, he actually does damage. Well, actually he's still a grasshopper, but now he kind of throws acid at your face. Think of it that way. While he is obviously an assassin, so super punishing when behind, a scaling jungle is not really one that you think, well, this is a bad early game, I guess I FF. No, you can stay, you can scale, and you can win. However, late game assassins don't always do very well purely because of positioning. You need to know how to team fight, win with flanks, understand target selection, and not run 1v5 eing in and thinking you're gonna one-shot the Maokai. Yes, he has this flow of mechanics that really show you what a good Khazix can do, but at the same time it does rely very heavily on your game planning and strategical sense. Now this list isn't really in any particular order, I just wanted to get you some sort of medium difficulty champion in there. But now we need to talk about Khazix's nemesis, Rengar. Rengar's bush jump mechanic and the fact that he doesn't have any gap closes when he's not in bushes, except for his ultimate of course, means that you really need to be creative about your positioning at all phases of the game. You also need to understand that his movement speed affects how far you can jump because there's a timer when you leave the bush for where that auto attack will be empowered so that you actually do jump. Early roots can be very punishing when you don't do them properly. Rengar behind is absolutely useless. He really doesn't do anything, and obviously he does scale, but typically a Rengar that doesn't know what he's doing in the early game and mid game won't have the quick wits and understanding to dominate the late game. Understanding which empowered ability to use in what situation, Q, W, E, everyone knows about the triple Q and the double Q and, making sure we one-shot the ADC. But what about those tight skirmishes in the mid game? What about those tight fights in the early game in the river? When you need to use your W to cleanse CC? When you need to use the Ebola to actually get close to a target? And one of the biggest things I see in bad Rengars is they just do not have enough alpha juice. And I almost mean that very literally. You need to know exactly how much damage you can dish and how far you can push it. Too many people will do a burst damage combo and then walk away. No, go back in the bush, reset, jump again, chase him down, use other bushes, track your pathing, understand when you want to flash. There are so many multi-layers to his kit and maximizing it to its fullest that when you see a very high elo Rengar, specifically you go look at some top lane career mains, which they kind of do use them in the top lane more in that server, it's absolutely beautiful to watch. I can only call it bush dancing. The way they're so creative with how they use a champion in and around those areas with his empowered abilities, waiting out cooldowns, using minions, other champions, I love it. But the skill ceiling, very high. And just a quick reminder, this isn't a video about the most mechanically difficult junglers. It's about the junglers that are most difficult to master. So while they might have an easier barrier of entry, to get to their full potential really is something that takes a lot of time, dedication, and sometimes talent. Although that last point might not apply to Shaco, yes, everyone knows I don't really like this champion at all. The thing is, a good Shaco player that really understands the ins and outs of the demonness of this particular kit is much better than someone who just picks it up for the first time. And now this season we have different reasons for why he's actually difficult to master, because not only can you build AD, you can also build AP and take him into support as a completely viable thing. Well, at least you could earlier in the season. His unique clears with the boxes, his invade routes, how you manage the enemy jungler and become disruptive. Your ganking pathing is actually very different, and it's one of the biggest things about good versus bad Shakos. They know when to invade and how to track and maximize this. They know when to actually pick the right moments to gank, use that ignite, and really destroy lanes. They also know very well how to flank and get to the right positions at the right time in teamfights and skirmishes. Basically, a good Shaco is absolutely impossible to deal with. He's tilting, he's frustrating, he irritates everyone in the game, even his own team. Really, if you are a good Shaco player, you become the mosquito that never dies. Except, you're actually killing everyone around you. Whether you dive in and assassinate people or even decide to split push, you do have those options. You can really master him and master the map when you have that total control. And if that wasn't enough, you also have your clone mechanics, which I think are quite underrated when we talk about this champion. Being highly intelligent about that, being an actual clown, tricking, gesturing, learning new tricks, things that work. They can be really big game changers in close situations that let good Shaco players walk around with a lead and other Shaco players look like, well, an actual jester. And next up we have Kindred. This champion has had a very weird history as of the last few years, dominating in Season 6, being nerfed, being kind of okay in Season 7, and then sort of technically disappearing for a couple years, before coming back really strong earlier this year to counter the meta and dominate the high elo ladder. The thing is, from an ADC point of view, the mark system in the jungle, understanding how to use that very well, mastering the mechanics of kiting with the Q and the W, maximizing the E execute damage, using your ultimate absolutely perfectly, in addition to clearing well and having the same impact as some of these other junglers that we have in the meta, is extraordinarily difficult. There's usually a reason we say, well, if you're D2+, Master 2+, yes, learn Kindred, you can definitely do very well with them. However, below that, they just do not see a lot of success at all, because unless the numbers are overtuned, they can be chased down by anti-ADC champions everywhere. The jungle is not a safe place for a tiny little lamb, and I guess the Woof is there as well. And not only that, there's a lot of confusion about itemization. I think a lot of Kindred's issues come from what items to build in what scenario, and how to maximize their damage and DPS. Short of going AP, there's a lot of actual options that are viable. But really, there's a lot of mechanics that goes into Kindred's actual play in addition to the game planning and maximizing that pressure, because using ranged as an ally in terms of jungle matchups, invading or ganking, is something very unique to the position. It's why Nidale is very difficult, and why Graves is much easier for everyone because that range is shorter and he is kind of like a tank ADC. Learning Kindred's optimized pathing, itemization, and mechanics really takes a long time, and that's why they're one of the most difficult junglers to master. Those are our core groups for this video, but I do want to give an honorable mention to Rek'Sai and Elise. Mechanically, not as difficult as the champions in this video. Well, at least for Rek'Sai, there are some hidden mechanics that make her kind of very strong, but they're not too difficult to get used to. Elise has 6 abilities, and using them properly and fluidly is still the mark of a great Elise player, but they don't have the same learning curve as the other junglers on this list, and in terms of when you start playing them versus when you master them. That being said, both require insanely good game knowledge. While their mechanics might not be as difficult, they are still very intense, and knowing how to use them in very tight situations to exert your dominance is actually very crucial. And when you couple that with the game knowledge, to actually win by the mid game, you've actually got some pretty difficult packages to get used to and to really get great at. But there you have it, hopefully some insight into some of the more difficult champions within the jungle. Let us know if you want to main or play any of these and how successful you've been this season. Don't forget to like, share, and comment if you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe for all the beautiful Mobalytics videos coming your way for all roles very soon. I've been your host Virkayu, and as always, I will see you all in the next video.